Property rental and sales contracts, info for expats and longer term tourists. I've lived in the USA much of my life. I've rented many different apartments across different cities and smaller towns in the US and had pretty much the same experience wherever I went in the USA. I've made 3 trips to the Philippines, and I've lived in 6 different condominiums, but I've also done a lot of dozens and dozens of videos about condominiums, real estate here in the Philippines. I watch the property market in other nations as well, such as Vietnam, Thailand, Cambodia, that type of thing. Anyway, I'm going to be doing some comparisons. One of the things about the Philippines is that the typical the typical rental agreement here, and we'll talk about a little bit about sales contracts a little bit later. Typical rental contract, they are often asking for 2 months security deposit and 1 month's the first month's up front. So it's 3 months. You got to come up with three months rent. And if that's 500 US dollars, for instance, which would be low for a lot of rental properties, you'd have to come up with 1,500. And the Philippines is still primarily a cash society, so oftentimes you have to pay that in cash. Please leave in the comments your experience, different countries, different nations and cities. And anyway, let's get into some of the details. And one of the reasons, my experience in the USA across many cities, different states, security deposit typically equal to 1 month's rent. Unlike here in the Philippines, oftentimes it is 2 months' rent, but it in the U.S. can range from half a month's rent to 2 months' rent as well, depending on the state laws and the property type. And that will cover potential damages beyond normal wear and tear, unpaid rent, cleaning costs, etc. Usually must be returned within a specified period of time, depending upon the state. After move out, 14 to 30 days, provided no damages or outstanding rent. There are a few states that require landlords to pay interest on those security deposits once annually as well. And then another deposit is a cleaning deposit, and this has been my experience in the U.S. With most places I rented. And it's often included in the security deposit, but can be a separate fee, usually equivalent to half a month's rent. My cleaning deposit was always less than that. Well, no, maybe it was about half, about 250 U.S. dollars back in the old days. Probably much higher now, and that would include shampooing the carpet and painting the walls, pretty much, and any other cleaning that would be required. Oh, I have never heard of anybody charging a cleaning deposit here, but it's probably included in the security deposit if they need to clean and repair different types of things. And most leases I've seen here state that the tenant may be required to pay for minor repairs, little things, and the most cases the landlord is required to take care of repairs of the larger appliances, plumbing, electrical, those types of things. But I have seen here in the Philippines, I have seen a couple leases that bothered me a bit, where one in particular was the tenant, the renter, had to pay the first $200 worth of any damages, whether it's minor or not, regardless. And yeah, I would not, I would not sign a lease like that, even if it was 100. I do take care of little things in most of the condos I've lived in. In 10 years, 6 different condos, and they're places I've paid for the air conditioner cleaning. Maybe 1,000 pesos, 1,500 pesos, 20, $30, and I deducted them, our agreement with my landlord, I deducted them from the next month's rent. Presently, I've got a good relationship with my landlady, and I take care of all the little stuff, the air conditioner cleaning, every 4 months. 20 bucks, 30 bucks, something like that. And she gives me the lower rate that she gave me during the government travel lockdowns, the pandemic. And so I take care of that. I don't bother her. She doesn't bother me. We've got a pretty good agreement going. Now, I did have my first place I rented from an Australian. After 6 months, I moved out to move to a little bit bigger place, nicer place, and he charged me 250 pesos. I cleaned the place like I always do, very well, probably cleaner than when I moved in. But he had his wife go in and clean it for 250 pesos, about $5 US, so not a bad deal at all. Advance rent, first month's rent always required, of course, before you move in, and last month's rent sometimes required at the beginning of a lease, especially in competitive markets in the U.S. Additional months rent, rarely more than 2 months rent, are required up front. I have seen, usually it's 1 month's rent and 2 months security deposit. That's very common here, although it's not uncommon for me to see first month's rent plus 1 month security deposit. And the higher end, more expensive places, I've even seen them ask for 2 months rent in advance and 2 months security deposit for 4 months, basically. Came across one really strange place where the lady wanted 4 months security deposit plus 2 months rent, 6 months up front. Crazy. In the U.S., standard lease terms usually 12 months, 6 months, occasionally month-to-month leases have become more and more common with in some areas. Renewal of leases often includes an option to renew with terms of the rent increases and notice periods. And if you early terminate, you may be required to pay a penalty of perhaps 2 months' rent or finding a replacement tenant. Then maybe you don't get that penalty. Here, I have seen people, even if they help get somebody in right away, they still charge them a penalty. I've heard that a couple different times. But if you've got a good relationship with your landlord, you probably get by without something like that. I'm going to jump over to a video I took from Moal Boal. It's on the west side of Cebu Island, resort type area, Panagsma Beach area. And this was in October 2021, right when the pandemic was over. We were starting to be able to travel again. Almost no one here, had the whole beach area to ourselves pretty much. And anyway, I talked to some more about the rental type contracts, comparing the Philippines, and it's a shock when people come to the Philippines. If you do Airbnb, Booking.com, that type of thing, a few weeks, couple months at a time, that's one thing. But once you start doing longer term, and I've seen quite a variety of leases here. I've walked away from a couple of them because one in particular was actually from a foreigner and basically said if anything breaks, I have to pay for it. So if the refrigerator, 5-year-old refrigerator would break a month or two in, he basically said I would have to replace it or fix it, pay to get it repaired. And I said, no, that's not going to happen. Type thing. So it's much more common for the landlord to pay for major issues like that, appliances, electric, plumbing type issues. But you will get, I came across a manager type. She managed many different condos a while back. And she said the first 6 months she'll pay for repairs, but after that the tenant has to pay for everything. And that's not that. I'd walk away from that also because that appliance, something else, the plumbing, maybe it's already several years old and start having issues with it leaking, whatever. It's not because you caused the damage. It's just wear and tear. So there's some oddball type situations that you can find here. Read the lease. Have a written agreement. Payment methods. It's different here in the Philippines. Check, money order, bank transfer, online payment platforms. Very common in the USA. Here, a lot of it's cash. Three of my landlords, they gave me deposit tickets and their bank account numbers. I went to their bank and deposited it, which was very easy here in the Philippines. Lots of different branches available. One Australian I rented two different places from. I paid him with PayPal. I deposited I paid him through the PayPal system, and that was a little bit of an issue because I'm dealing with dollars and Philippine pesos and Australian dollars, and just the conversion could be an issue at times. Uh, Late fees, you might find late fees after a number of days. You might be asked to pay some kind of a late fee here. Additional fees, application fee. Now, I've not had to pay any application fee, but I think most of the places I lived in the USA, I had to pay a application fee, non-refundable, 25, 50, $75. And they cover background checks, credit checks, that type of thing. If you have a pet, now most places in the Philippines do not allow pets, but there are a few condominiums they say they're pet friendly. But even the landlord may not want pets in their condominium that they're going to rent. So it's two different things. It's the developer itself, the management, plus the owner of the condo. But you might be asked in America to charge a one-time fee for a pet, 200 to 500 common, or a monthly pet rent, 25 to $50 if they allow the pets. Parking fees, another thing, monthly fee for or designated parking, covered parking, could be another charge. A couple of years ago when I had a motorbike, I paid 600 pesos, little over $100 a month for a parking spot. Really quite no 3,000 pesos. I'm sorry, but cars were paying 6,000 pesos, a little over 100 US dollars. And maintenance and repairs, very very important. Generally in the U.S., landlord responsible for structural repairs, major appliances, plumbing, and electrical issues. Tenant responsibilities, minor repairs, cosmetic damages, regular maintenance. Emergency repairs, landlords must address emergencies, water leaks, HVAC failure within a reasonable time frame. And there are often in the U.S. state, local, city laws that provide for those types of issues. Other lease agreements, provisions, the use of the premises usually specifies for residential only, no commercial activities. Subletting often is prohibited or require the landlord's approval for subletting. Now, I have met a couple people here that the one guy I think was making money doing it. The other guy kind of sounded like he wasn't having very good luck, wasn't making much money. Where you go in and you make an agreement, you agree to lease a place for a year and pay, or 2 years perhaps, and pay a lower than going rate, and then you try to sublet that out on Airbnb, for instance, at higher rates, so you're getting a return on your investment. And just it depends upon the market, depends upon how good you are at marketing, and the demand at the time. Like here in the Philippines, we've got high seasons, low seasons, so you need to make enough during the high season. So if you're lacking during the low season, just like the retail stores make most of their profits during Christmas season in the U.S. Guest policy. I have not seen that in any of my leases here in the Philippines. I think I've seen it in the U.S., but they may limit that. But there are some condominiums that, for instance, if you have several guests, they have to pay to use the pool, 100 pesos, a couple bucks, something like that per person. Or they may limit the number of people who can be staying in your place. Insurance, renter's insurance. Some places in the U.S. they may require you to obtain renter's insurance to cover damages, so it helps with the liability that the owner would have in case of water breakage and flooding of the unit, that type of thing. I've never seen anything like that here in the Philippines. Not sure if it's available or not. One other thing, a couple other things in the USA is that I always rented apartments. Very rare to find condominiums, so I rented apartments, so I didn't have condo dues, that type of thing. Here in the Philippines, the majority you can find apartments that don't have condo dues, but much more common the high rises, mid rise buildings in the cities are condominiums, and most of the time the condo dues are included in the quoted rental price. But if you see a lower price than other people, it's often because they have not included they've excluded, and you have to pay the condo dues up and above that. And my observation over 10 years is that that can range anywhere from, I've seen a low of 40 pesos per square meter uh, to a high of over 150 pesos per square meter. And so that can add up. That can add up the bigger places. 70 to 110, that's a little more range there. And the building I live in for a little over 3 years now, it was 70 per square meter. And then after Typhoon Odette, they raised it to, I think they raised it to 80 for a while. Then they raised it to 100 pesos per square meter. So 42 square meters at 100, that's 4,200 in condo dues, and that is included in my rent. And I'm fortunate that my landlady did not increase it as the price went up. They absorbed that because they bought the unit pre-selling, what, 12, 13, 14 years ago. So they've got a low cost basis. So yeah, and that's the other deal. If you're renting a lot of these new projects, people, instead of paying 2 to 3 million pesos for a studio, they're paying they're paying 5.5 to 6.5 million pesos for the same place. They need to get a much higher rental rate out of that to try to get a return on their investment, if that's even possible. That with so much competition now. So with some people, you are able to negotiate. Sometimes you can negotiate a little bit on the price. Sometimes you might be able to negotiate the terms. A subscriber of mine recently found a place. They wanted 2 months security deposit, 2 months rent up front, and he talked them down to, there again, because the vacancy rate was high, 1 month and 1 month, so 2 months instead. Um, I had a friend that rented, I think he's been here 6, 7 months. Then he goes back to the U.S. for 5, 6 months, comes back here, and he adjusted the lease when he signed it, and they agreed to it that his instead of 2 months security deposit, he was paying first month and last month's and 1 month security deposit. So when it came to his last month rent, he just used that second month's on his agreement, and the landlord or manager was a little bit surprised, and he had to remind them that they had agreed to that in the contract. I've seen people negotiate a lower rate and say, I'll rent for instead of 12,000 pesos a month, I'll rent for 10,000 pesos a month, and I'll pay you 6 months in advance. I'll pay you the first 6 months right away. And particular case I'm aware of, the landlord accepted that cash in hand, and I've heard other people that have been approached with that type of thing that they refuse to do it. Other people, I was going to rent a place, but they insisted that I do the post-dated check thing, 12 post-dated checks. I don't have a checking account in the Philippines. Don't want a checking account right now. Maybe at some point in time, but yeah, I don't want to do that. Hand over 12 post-dated checks. If there's an issue with the building, it becomes uninhabitable, for instance, for any type of reason, I don't want those checks hanging out there long term. Now let's talk about sales contracts, and I'll start with kind of a controversial one. Timeshares here in the Philippines there are timeshares, but they're not. They're a little bit rare, and gosh, decades ago they started getting a bad reputation in the USA and around the world. People would pay a lot of money and promises of all sorts of things. And in the end, a lot of it didn't turn out to be quite what it was meant to be. And there's some of that type of thing going on here in the Philippines as well. But in fact, there's a market. There's a market, I think, across the world for people trying to sell their memberships and their timeshares at huge discounts. So, best advice is just be very wary before getting involved in something like that. Um, Sales contracts here in the USA and probably other countries around the world, you've got a pretty good system of land titles, uh, legitimate land titles. You've got escrow accounts. You've got different banks that have better control of the situation. The real estate companies, the multi listings that they have in the U.S. Completely different system than what you have in many countries. Like here in the Philippines, you don't have an MLS service. Every agent, broker, real estate company is out there kind of doing their own thing. And if there are laws and that type of thing, but they do not have, a lot of the land is not titled properly. It may have been subdivided at some point in time. The person that you think you're buying land from, that they may have sold a portion of that property off to somebody and it wasn't titled properly. You think you're buying it, and somebody comes back later and they show you this and that and their documents, and it gets tied up in court for many years. Um, my best advice is to use a lawyer, real estate lawyer, uh, and or somebody who understands the system well, who knows how to check the documentation, the legalities, before going forward. I've got a subscriber and friend who did. He bought property without going through the due diligence, and yeah, he held his breath basically and was a little bit under stress for a couple of years until it turned out, luckily for him, that the title was free and clear, and he finally got the proper title. I know of other situation. Another friend of mine that bought on the secondary market from a Brit, and the Brit had never gotten the title for the condominium property, and took many years before, I'm not sure if he ever has received the proper title for his unit. And even if you're buying new from a developer, read the contract, because it's I'm aware of a number of different places where they're basically selling one thing, but they've got rights to change the development substantially over time, and that is written into the sales contract. anyway, you want to understand that what are you actually buying? What are your guarantees? Anyway, thanks for coming along. Looking forward to the comments, and you can learn a lot just by reading through the comments sometimes. So we'll see you in the next video. Safe travels.